We're on lesson 6 of chapter 8, which we're going to factor ax squared plus bx plus c. First we're going to factor when a is positive, then we're going to factor when a is negative, then we'll solve a real-world problem. Last time we were factoring x squared plus bx plus c. So when you add this a multiplication at the beginning, it changes it up a little bit. When we do factor this expression, I need to find the factors of a and the factors of c, and when they're multiplied together, their sum should equal b. And that's what this means here. The sum of the multiplied factors of a and c equals b. So what does that mean? Let's use an example to explain that. I have 5w squared minus 11w plus 2. So first I need to find the factors of a. Well, 5 is a prime number, so it'd be 1 and 5, so that's my factors of a. Now I need to find the factors of 2, although you see that the b is negative, which tells me that it's got to be two negative numbers. So I would have negative 1 and negative 2. Well, there's actually two different ways I can multiply this, right? I could have the 1s matched up with the 1 and the 5 matched up with the negative 2. I could also have the 1 matched up with the negative 2 and the 5 matched up with the negative 1. So let's try both options. Since a is with the w's here and the 2 is just the numberless variable, 1 with the negative 1 would be 1w minus 1. And then 5 with the negative 2 would be 5w minus 2. So here we can just focus on that middle term b. And those come from whenever we multiply the variable times the numbers without a variable. So in this case that would be 1w times negative 2, and then the 5w times the negative 1. Well, 1w times negative 2 is minus 2w, or negative 2w. Positive 5w times negative 1 would be negative 5w. Negative 2 minus 5 equals negative 7w. Negative 7w does not match our b, so this one can't be the possible factorization. So it'll have to be this one if we can factor. We'd have 1w times the negative 1, the negative 2 times the 5w. 1w times negative 1 would be negative 1w. 5w times negative 2 would be negative 10w. Negative 1w minus 10w equals negative 11w. And then I notice that this is the same as our b, which means that this factorization is the one that is correct. So your answer would be 1w minus 2, then 5w minus 1. So let's try that on a few of these here. We have 2x squared minus 7x plus 3. Since the a and the b are both prime numbers, that'll make it only two possible factors. So for 2, the factors would be 1 and 2, so we'll write that both times. For the c, I notice that the b is negative, so these have to be two negative numbers. That would be negative 1 and negative 3, or I'm going to do negative 3 and negative 1 to get me different factoring. So as I create my factors, I'd have 1 and negative 1 and 2 and 3. Since a has the x, it would be 1x minus 1 times 2x minus 3. So if we're going to find that middle term, we're going to focus on the variables times the non-variables. So we have 1 times negative 3 and negative 1 times 2. 1 times negative 3 would be negative 3x. 2 times negative 1 would be negative 2x. Negative 3 minus 2 equals negative 5x. That's not the middle number here. So let's try this one. We'd have 1x minus 3, and then 2x minus 1. So the 1x times the negative 1 would be negative x, negative 1x. 2x times negative 3 would be negative 6x. Negative 1x minus 6x equals negative 7x. And I notice that that matches my b. So this is the correct factorization. So we would write 1x minus 3 and 2x minus 1. So x minus 3 instead of 1x, and then 2x minus 1. Now we need to factor this one. We have 4n squared plus 11n minus 3. So this one's actually going to have a lot of different possible combinations because the 4 is not a prime number, and I notice that the 3 here is negative. It's going to take a positive and a negative number to make negative 3. So if I start with the factorizations of 4, such as 1 and 4, I need to multiply all the different possible combinations with 1 and 4. So it could be negative 1 and positive 3. It could be positive 1 and negative 3. It could also be positive 3 and negative 1. And then it could also be negative 3 and positive 1. We have to try all of these with the 1 and the 4. So I'm actually going to need 8 spots because I need to try all of these combinations with 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. But for my sake, I'm going to try all the 1 and 4s first, and if none of them work, I'll go do the 2 and 2s. So if I write out these factorizations and pair them up, I would have 1n, or just n, minus 1, and then 4n plus 3. I solve it right away just in case this would be the correct one. So n times positive 3 would be 3n. 4n times negative 1 would be negative 4n. Positive 3 minus 4 would be negative 1. That does not equal positive 11. Let's try this factorization then. I have 1n plus 1, or n plus 1. I have 4n minus 3. N times negative 3 is negative 3n. 4n times 1 is positive 4n. Negative 3n plus 4n is positive 1n, which does not equal positive 11. So far we're not on the right track. Let's try this next one. I have positive n plus 3 times 4n minus 1. N times negative 1 is negative n. 4n times 3 is positive 12n. Negative 1n plus 12n equals positive 11n. And there it is. So I have now found my answer here, which would be n plus 3, and then 4n minus 1. So I didn't actually have to try all 8, but if this wouldn't have worked, I would have had to do it one more by erasing these ones and doing 2 and 2 for all of these ones. But thankfully I didn't have to go that far. I found my answer. Now we need to factor when a is negative. So it actually gave us an equation here. We have negative 4x squared plus 12x equals negative 7. So let's bring the negative 7 over to this side. We have negative 4x squared plus 12x, now plus 7, and that's going to equal 0. When a is negative, we really don't want that to happen because it makes our life very difficult. So what we need to do is we need to multiply everything times negative 1. So that'll give me the equation of 4x squared minus 12x minus 7. And this will be much easier to work with. So here I need to list the factors of a, which would be 1 and 4. The factors of c, I have a negative 7, which means it has to be a positive and a negative, so that should be quite a bit here. So positive 1, negative 7, negative 1, positive 7, negative 7, positive 1, positive 7, negative 1. Those are the 4 combinations. So I need to do all of these with 1 and 4. I know the other factors are 2 and 2, but let's try the 1 and 4 ones first. So this would be 1x plus 1, or x plus 1, times 4x minus 7. So this would give me negative 7x plus 4x, and that's going to give me negative 3, which is not 12. So try the next one. This is going to be x minus 1 now, times 4x plus 7. This is going to give me 7x minus 4x, which is going to be positive 3, which is not the case. Now I have x minus 7 and 4x plus 1. This is going to give me 1x minus 28x. That's going to be negative 27x, which is not the case. This one's going to give me x plus 7, and then 4x minus 1. So this will give me negative x plus 28x, and I know that's not going to equal 12x. Now we got to move on to the other factors of a, which are 2 and 2. Well, I can have 1 and negative 7 Then I could have -1 and +7. And what's nice about this one is because they're 2 and 2, they're exactly the same. I don't really have to flip these ones and try the other ones. I know it's going to be one of these two. So for this one, this would give me 2x plus 1. It would be 2x minus 7. So let's try that one. 2x times -7 would be -14x. 2x plus 1. 2x times +1 would be +2x. -14x plus 2x equals -12x, which is exactly what we want. So this would be our factorization at long last. So 2x plus 1, 2x minus 7, and that needs to equal 0 because we're doing an equation. So we need to make both of these equal 0. So we have 2x plus 1 equals 0. Subtract 1 from both sides. 2x equals -1. So that would be -1/2 for x. Then we also have 2x minus 7 equals 0. So we can add 7 to both sides. So that gives us 2x equals 7. Divide both sides by 2, and that would be 3.5. So we would say it would be -1/2 or 3.5. Let's solve a real-world problem. It says an athlete throws a discus from an initial height of 6 feet with an initial velocity of 46 feet per second. It says write an equation that gives the height in feet of the discus as a function of time in seconds since it left the athlete's hand. We used this vertical motion model on the previous problem this chapter, so we'll use this as well. T is the time in seconds that it's been in the air, v is the initial velocity, and s is the initial height, and then h is the height at that time. So if we start with that, we have h equals -16t squared plus the velocity times the time plus s. It tells us the initial velocity at 46 feet per second. So this will be 46. The initial height is 6 feet, so that would be s, so this becomes 6. So if we replace those, this becomes our equation. H equals -16 times t squared plus 46 times t plus 6. Now it asks us after how many seconds does the discus hit the ground? And the ground would be 0 for height, so that replaces the h with a 0. So we have 0 equals -16t squared plus 46t plus 6. Well, here I see I have a negative a, and I never want that. And while I'm dividing by -1, I might as well divide by -2 since they're all divisible by 2. So I'd have -2. This would be 8t squared. Now it's minus 23t, and then it's minus 3. So here's my new equation. And that all equals 0. So to solve this, I would have to do exactly what I was doing before, where I find the factors of a and the factors of c. For time's sake, and since I already have the answer, I'm just going to plug in the ones that I know are correct. In this case, you'd actually have to make that table again. The factors would be 8 and 1 for a, and they would be 1 and -3 for c, since it's a negative number. This would turn into 8t plus 1, and then we'd have 1t, or just t, minus 3. And that would work out because 8 times -3 is -24, 1 times 1 is +1, so that'd be -23 is what we have. You have to remember that this is going to equal 0 now, because we want to find the height. So t minus 3 would be very easy. It would have to be +3. Here I have 8t plus 1 equals 0. So 8t plus 1 equals 0. Subtract 1 from both sides. 8t equals -1. Divide both sides by 8. So t could equal -1/8, or it could equal +3. Now here's where I have to use my common sense. There's no way it could take a negative amount of time to hit the ground after she let go, so then my answer would have to be 3 seconds.